Oops.
Replace that ceiling tile. Oops.
So you good? All right, we call the meeting to order. Can everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And if you could remain standing for a moment of silence to honor the memory of the lives stolen as a result of the TAP shooting 2 years ago today. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call. Hunter,
Here?
Mary Ann,
Here.
Josh,
I'm here.
Brian,
Here?
Scott,
I'm here.
Peter,
Here.
and I am here. May I have a motion to approve roll?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we're doing the public hearing next for a safety plan and code of conduct. So I will turn it over to Ms. Billis. Mhm.
Says. I don't have a code.
Top secret. It's time, huh?
Yeah. On Virgil's.
Gotta love technology.
Might have to do it from my screen.
Okay. I'll share it with you. Share the presentation.
Okay, give me just a second. Feel like there should be some music playing. or
Such
something.
anticipation for a safety
Telejoke
hearing.
or something.
Mm.
Do you feel the pressure when?
Yeah, like millions of people are watching. Uh,
I'm still trying to get this thing to open. There we go. It'll take 10 minutes.
Oh, come on. Who did that? Appropriate music.
I glanced up where to come up with a commercial though.
Night of the year down.
I know. We're gonna get it on before dark. I'm sorry.
Getting warmer.
Some might, just not us.
We go on and come back to it, or do we have to do it?
Oh, the whole thing is
The
tied to
whole-
this one.
Oh,
so,
that's
yeah,
true. Okay.
It's up there. We got it.
Okay.
Yay.
Hold on, I'm trying to get there. Oh, it's not letting me share the whole thing.
It's not working when you hit slideshow?
No, I know, but
Try and turn it on and off again. Here to help.
This is kind of how we're gonna have to roll here.
I guess
So,
roll that
all right,
way.
we're gonna roll this way. Sorry. I don't know what's going on.
You're all,
Ready?
yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Bayless.
Yes, well, good evening, everyone. My name's Joanne Bayless. I'm the Assistant Superintendent and Chief Safety Officer for Sweet Home Schools. Welcome to our annual public safety hearing. This is our annual opportunity for our public to learn about our district safety plan and any changes that we might be looking at for the next school year and also related to our code of conduct. It's an opportunity on an annual basis for our public to provide input and feedback on our district-wide safety plan and code of conduct. So before we begin into the details, I just wanted, if you go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to thank our district safety committee. A district safety committee is made up of over 30 individuals throughout the district from all stakeholder groups who support the good work of our district safety. In particular, I would note Ms. Jason and Mr. Johnson's role on the district safety committee for many years. We appreciate your service and under the leadership of Dr. Genestri and our ever vigilant focus here as a board in total on the focus on student and staff safety. I would note this year we added our new school resource officer, Officer G, to our safety committee. And we also added our student voice. So our own Hunter Trilov joined our committee as well as Catherine Elmdauer and Erica Chan. So we appreciated having their voices on our safety committee this year as well. Next slide, we just some quick highlights from the work of our district safety committee. We did hold a parent forum in October, as many will recall. We're very proud of that forum and the opportunity to bring our parents together and celebrate our partnership and collaboration with Amherst PD and Town of Tonawanda PD. We were fully implemented our mass notification system this year. It's a point of pride. It's a system that's been in the works for a number of years, and it's been fully implemented in all of our buildings. We worked on uniform signage throughout the district with our emergency responses, our Own the Door campaign, which is to enhance our lockdown practice to ensure that all of our staff and students understand the importance of getting behind a locked door in the event of an emergency. We worked on the workplace violence prevention plan that Dr. Genestri will speak to a little bit later this evening. And then, of course, the charge of the committee on an annual basis is to review the code of conduct and the district safety plan. Some of our additional highlights may be presented in a future board meeting, but we wanted to limit our focus tonight on the review of the code of conduct and the safety plan. So the code of conduct, the public hearing requirements stem from New York State Education Law 2801, which requires districts to adopt a code of conduct to maintain order on school property. It's something that the District Safety Committee does update on an annual basis. We do get input from our building administrators, from our stakeholder groups, as well as the committee to review the code of conduct. This is adopted on an annual basis by our Board of Education. And there's two versions of it, a full version of the code of conduct and a plain language version for students. And both versions are disseminated on an annual basis to our students and families. Also posted on our website and disseminated in various publications throughout the year to keep our families informed of our expectations with regard to the code of conduct. So this year, in terms of the sections that we reviewed, if you wouldn't mind, the next slide, please. While there are 15 sections of the code of conduct, we did focus our attention this year on prohibited conduct. And on the next slide, we also took a look at,
Sorry.
that's okay. The next slide, we also took a look at visitors to the school and public conduct on school property. So in the next slide in particular, with regard to prohibited student conduct, there were some minor changes. One, there was some redundant language that was in section C of 4C that we eliminated. But in section 7, in terms of academic misconduct, we did flesh out a little more with regard to academic misconduct, adding the language with regard to AI or artificial intelligence to the extent that it produces work that's not the original student's work for grading purposes. The next area that the committee looked at it's a simple change, changing the may not to the permissive may be required. This permissive language does allow the district to make a decision at a future opportunity to utilize the Raptor visitor management system for public events, which we currently do not do. And then the last change to the code of conduct was with regard to penalties for public conduct on school property. There was some language in here about persons who do violate our code of conduct while they're on premises. And we did add the language that does memorialize our existing practice, which is when there are violations to our code of conduct by visitors, that we do in some cases, based on a review of the matter, issue what's called a no trespass letter to that said visitor, indicating that they're not welcome on school property for the violation of our code of conduct. So those were the minor changes and recommendations that were made by the committee to the Board of Education in terms of updating our code of conduct. Moving on to the district-wide safety plan. As you know, the regulations, the Commissioner Regulations 155-17 and New York State Education Law 2801 also require districts to have district-wide safety plans. These plans are a public document. They are put up on our website, and it is something that our public can comment on, which is, of course, the point of today's hearing. The district safety plan does embody a number of elements that provide for all facets of school safety. The next slide speaks to the building level emergency response plan. The building level emergency response plans are not public documents. They are confidential as they are detailed information on how our school personnel and students respond under different types of emergencies. These building level emergency response plans are shared with law enforcement agencies and emergency responders. And we do annually submit our plans to the New York State Education Department on an annual basis so that they are fully informed of our commitment to safety and our compliance with all State Education Department regulations with regard to safety plans. This year, if you would, thank you, Mr. Feldman. This year, there's 5 major sections to the district-wide safety plan. On an annual basis, we will update demographic information, name changes, phone number changes, location changes, et cetera. So demographics are changed on an annual basis. But this year we focused on section 5000, which was the prevention and intervention strategy piece. There was a number of pages that were changed in that section that are, I think you have that in your board documents. The language itself is not new. The language essentially memorialized our existing practices and fleshed them out. Actually, there's a slide in the future that I can speak to a little more in more detail. But the next slide, sorry, I didn't realize, my apologies.
It's okay.
At the end of each district safety plan, there are a number of appendices. This year, we are adding number 7, which is an emergency remote learning plan. This is also required by the Education Department. You'll note that in the last 3 consecutive years, we've added various plans to as an appendix to the district safety plan. 2 years ago, we enacted the public employer health emergency plan. Last year was a cybersecurity plan. This year is the remote learning plan. On the next slide, it gives a little more detail about what the emergency remote learning plan entails. And this is in response to amendments to section 175E and 155-17 of the Commissioner Regulations. And this speaks to essentially creating a base plan for all districts to have ready to go in the event of a public health emergency similar to the one that we would have experienced during COVID. And it provides for ensuring that all of our students have internet and digital device access, that there's a daily schedule, that we understand which instructional platforms would be used, the expectations for digital etiquette, communication protocols for students and parents, plans for students with special services, non-instructional services, and the instructional hours that would be used to claim for state ed purposes. So this again is a remote, this emergency remote learning plan is a base plan. It is now an appendix at the end of our district safety plan for your review. And then finally, the changes I was speaking to with regard to section 5,000. Again, these aren't new changes or new updates. Essentially, our section 5,000 was more limited in terms of memorializing our existing practice. So we spent some time fleshing out each of those areas in terms of what we actually do here at Sweet Home. It tended to be more generic. And so the updated changes to the district-wide safety plan with regard to section 5,000 prevention and intervention spoke to the current practices of the district and fleshed them out in greater detail. And that in sum speaks to the changes that were made and proposed by the District Safety Committee to the Board of Education for adoption. And this begins then the 30-day, the last slide, if you will, begins the 30-day public comment period where the community can review the changes that were made, proposed, and provide input to the district. Comments can be submitted to myself or my partner, Steve Rosler, who couldn't be here tonight. He's our supervisor of facilities, buildings and grounds. So anyone, if you have comment, you're welcome to share them with us or send it directly to the district. But that in a nutshell is our presentation on the annual public safety hearing. I don't know if there's any questions.
You can breathe now.
Yes.
I feel like you did that all in one breath.
Try to do it as quickly as possible.
Thank you for all the work that you've done on that. I mean, that's a huge committee to lead and you've done a great job leading. So thank you for all the work.
Of course, thank you. My pleasure.
I had a question, not necessarily directed to you, but just a more general question and a comment regarding in the code of conduct. I noticed the plain language code of conduct, it said, indicated that the use of certain devices is prohibited during classroom instructional time. And so I'm wondering, is that actually taking place in terms of like the cell phones? Because I think that, you know, when we look at all the studies that are now coming out, and I've mentioned this before, this is an opinion of mine, and I know districts are starting to implement policies where cell phones are much more restricted in the classroom, you know, to the point where they sell actually these pouches now that you can put. There's an article actually in the New York State School Board Association saying that it was something like 70% of districts across the country are now instituting some form of ban on, you know, various media devices. I know that there's a lot of parents and people out there that would not favor that, but I think the other side of that is, at least for consideration, is that you know, there's a lot of studies, and the Surgeon General just put out something about, you know, the challenges of social media, the high levels of anxiety and depression and all of these things. So you know, there's a lawsuit that is going on, a class action lawsuit against social media companies. And, you know, my feeling is generally, if we acknowledge all of that, but yet still allow this, you know, are we really, you know, doing what we're saying we believe, you know? And so in these pouches, for instance, that are being used now in some school districts, essentially your cell phone goes in there, it locks through a magnet, and then when they leave, they can swipe it to unlock their cell phone. So it really restricts the use of the phone. My kids don't have cell phones, they're too young, so maybe I would feel differently as they get older, because I know a lot of parents like to have that communication on an ongoing basis with their kids throughout the day. But I just wondering if anybody had any thoughts on that or feedback from.
I mean, I can start on that. I would say it's a very divided issue. I appreciate our teachers and our administrators who have granted some leeway and grace inside the classroom, and we allow our teachers to put together policies on how they want devices to be used inside of the classroom. I think a lot of our time that we where we're seeing the use of the phone for not great purposes is outside of the classroom, whether it's in the hallways or maybe in the cafeterias, especially at home at night. If we look at our discipline or mental health issues, it's usually related to some kind of social media between two students that are not, or groups of students that are not happening inside of the classroom. But I would agree, like, we hear both sides of it all the time. And I'm not sure, this is an assumption, but if we surveyed the district, it would probably be pretty split down the middle. So what we have done is give teachers and administrators a lot of leeway inside the building when it comes to cell phones. Like at the elementary level, I know they're not allowed. At the middle school, they're supposed to be put in the lockers as well. We know that that's a very difficult thing to patrol during the day. And at the high school, there's a lot more leeway, but it does, a lot of it is teacher driven.
Yeah, I would say that there's been a lot of focus on if the cell phones are involved in anything, how to use them productively and in a positive way. Because let's face it, no matter what we do, they're going to find a way to use it. Even the pouches, my niece attends a school where they had the pouches and they found a way to unlock them. So they would lock them and think that they're all locked for the day. The kids go into the bathroom, unlock, they have their cell phones. So they find a way no matter what. So if we don't focus on on teaching students to be productive and positive with the devices, then that's going to always be the struggle. We're always going to be policing it. So it's more about how do we help them be positive.
I will say during my superintendent student advisory board meetings, it's funny, the difference between the middle school and the high school. The middle school is, they absolutely want them all day long. They want more access to them. How am I going to get in touch with my parents if I need to get in touch with them was the common theme around the table. But at the high school level, I think there's some, they're getting sick of cell phones at the high school. And I don't want to speak for Hunter, but that was the sentiment around the table, that it's so overwhelmingly part of the day that I think high school students are starting to pull back. And that's what I got at the table anyway. And you're more than welcome to.
Again, it's very divided, I would say, especially amongst the student body, depending on who you ask. At the high school, we do have such free use and access to them that, yeah, it's not as big of a deal for us to have them or not have them. We are kind of permitted to use them as much or as little as we want. Specific teachers have their own policies regarding phone use in class, and the disciplinary repercussions that come with that. Some teachers encourage you using it for your assignments. It really is kind of a classroom by classroom situation. I will say, like Dr. Janistry said, most of the problems that occur with them do seem to happen outside of that classroom setting. But it absolutely can carry over, which is the problem we are seeing. I don't mean to speak for the high school administration at all, but it's my understanding that next year their policy on devices is going to change somewhat. Believe it's going to be a little more restrictive with student devices. Again, I don't want to speak for Mr. Baker or the administration, but that's my general understanding.
Anything else? Nope.
I don't know if I can ask.
It's a public
Yeah,
hearing.
because this is
Yeah,
a
it's a
public
public
hearing.
hearing, you're allowed to.
Please.
Yeah.
Curious if, at least high school, the Steve Holmes School District has. Oh, yes. Yep. The whole district has an SRO, and there are also security officers in the building as well on a full-time basis.
No, they.
No, the SRO, it covers all of our buildings, but the high school has added, actually, the high school and the middle school have added security as well.
And we do have an agreement with Tonawanda Police for,
Glendale.
for our Glendale School
And the Ready Academy.
and Ready. Thank you. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Thank you.
All right. The approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes of the previous meeting? I have a motion.
So moved.
Say
Second.
those words. All in favor?
Aye.
Any communications? We have one from Harris Beach, and I did see one come from one of the elementary schools about a Leadership Day.
Yeah, Heritage Heights.
Heritage is doing a Leadership Day next week. Anybody have anything else?
Were you gonna check on one of our
I
legal
was.
alerts?
Beat me
Yes,
to the punch.
thank you.
So there was a communication from the Amherst IDA last week that Mr. Johnson brought up on the floor of the board, and I had not seen it, but I did read it, and I did communicate back to Mr. Johnson
Thank you.
about what it was about. Essentially, the Amherst IDA is setting parameters for new builds in the town, thresholds that those new builds must meet for apartment complexes and things like that, for workforce development housing, low-income housing. So they set parameters as far as that goes in terms of that. And then basically, in order to, if there's a pilot that is asked for of the IDA on those properties, that pilot, however long it extends, the affordable housing in that unit must extend either 3 to 5 years beyond the expiration of the pilot. So that's basically what it
Is
is.
that
There's
just
not,
new builds or?
correct, going
Or like our
forward.
standing, I know there's some.
Yep, and what I'll say is Dr. Genestri and I were at an IDA meeting, I don't know, like a month or so ago.
Yeah, about a month ago.
If you've noticed up on Sweet Home and Dodge going towards North Forest, they're clearing out some things in there for some development. And they were talking about pilots and how much of a percentage of those new builds are what they call workforce development housing. So they have to meet a certain threshold of a percentage of the overall build to come and request a pilot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Sure.
Thank you. Christy, I got another parent stopped me at Wegmans, said, wonderful. They really are, this is like such good PR for us. It's going great. And I did get a question from a parent and I talked to Mr. Genestri about it regarding after-school clubs, and we'll see a future presentation
Yep,
about that.
Yeah, I got the list. I pulled up the list. There's 117 clubs that were approved this year throughout the district, pre-K through 12. So I can do some
Yeah,
updates for the board on
just to
that.
see how many we've got this year and where we intend, maybe when you get more information from staff, where we're gonna go with that, because as we get more buses and
Yep.
I'd like to see those clubs start coming back to their original.
I think they're back and we're
And
we're doing.
well, you'll
a
tell
great
us
job.
about
Yep.
busing and
Yep.
all that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Right. Moving on to unfinished business, we have none. Dr. Genestri, your
All
turn.
right, thank you, Mrs. Battaglia. We have a presentation for the board tonight, Dr. Kozakowski and the team. I'll let her introduce them, but they are here to give the board an update on how our transition from paper-based to computer-based testing went this year. I want to thank the team first and foremost, and I'll thank them again at the end. It was a lot of work. It was a super heavy lift to get us from a place where a year ago, everybody was paper-based to this year, everybody was using their iPads to complete the tests. Through a lot of discussion and talk, we decided to go, we were required to do 2 grade levels this year, but we decided to go all in. While it was scary, I think Dr. Kozakowski and the team really did a lot to ease the fears of everybody involved, and wanted to invite her here tonight to talk to the board about how computer-based testing went. So everybody's get up there.
So you'll see in a future slide that this was a huge lift for a lot of people, but we have Katie Bearlery, who's representing special ed, and we have Karen Delapant and Jim Ryan, who are representing our elementary administration, but there was a large group, which I will point out. So if we go to our first slide, just to give you an idea of really how we made this decision and just our implementation plan. So back in August, we had a meeting with our administrative team, and we talked about that minimally we were required to commit to 5th and 8th grade that would complete computer-based testing. But we talked about the different options if we felt, did we want to complete those 2 grade levels across the board, just elementary, middle school, or some kind of combination. At that point, we did decide to make the commitment to vendor scoring. So we are using a third-party scoring system to cut down on the time that teachers would be out of the classrooms for training and scoring itself. So in October, at that point, we had completed the tech readiness checklist. So our tech team came together and discussed the minimal requirements for us to complete computer-based testing. So things like our bandwidth, access, the types of devices that we're using. So that was completed. And once we were able to bring that information back to our administrative team, after some conversation, we decided that we would administer computer-based testing for all 3 through 8. So we talked about what that schedule could look like to make sure that we had the proper support in place. And we participated in a regional professional development opportunity that was held at Erie One BOCES. So our tech coaches and our administrative team were invited to that to kind of talk about implementation and what has worked well across the region. So in November, we decided to have a commitment that we would have a professional development day for all 3 through 8 staff members that had that focus, just to get everybody feeling more comfortable. Prior to that, the administrators spoke with their staff members to kind of let them know what the decision was and that professional development would be happening. We also made the decision to purchase stylus pens across the district. So all 3 through 8 had a class set. And that way we got them in the hands of our teachers so they could start using them regularly with the students. So they were starting to feel more comfortable. There was also a communication that was sent to families regarding the January simulation. So we were only required to choose one content area and really one grade level, and we could have the pilot be as small as we wanted it to be. We decided to make it as authentic as possible for the January simulation. So we chose math as the content area because the digital tools tend to be a little bit more challenging, but we had it across all 3 through 8. So this time we rostered staff and students, we input accommodations, everything as we would. Following the January simulation, a survey was sent out to all staff members. And at the meetings, such as the tech team meeting, the building principal meetings, we really reviewed all of the survey feedback. We let the instructional coaches know, any teachers who had some questions or might be feeling uncomfortable, we let everybody know where they needed to direct their efforts. So they had ongoing support with the tech coaches and instructional coaches. Then for February and April, really just ongoing, made sure that our iPads had the updated iOS updates, that the generations that we were using were the most compatible with the Nextera and Questar. Rostering of students were complete. The input of accommodations, which was a huge lift from our school psychs and our special education department, and then just staff meetings and additional administrative training. So we brought the teams together quite a bit so everybody was feeling really comfortable. So this is just a high level of really the steps that it took to get to the point of full implementation. On the next slide, you'll see the support structure that we have in place. So you'll see the district level tech team, our data team, Tom Roberts and Fallon Kappenhurst were huge in helping making sure that everything was rostered appropriately and that our status codes were complete. District office played a big part in this with communications and just coordination with the teams. At the building level, our administrators, and then, as I mentioned, we had a team that completed the 504 IEP and our L accommodation. So you'll see all of those members listed there. If we go to the next slide. So one thing that we took a look at was elementary participation. So at this point, so the window is open for May 17th. So when you complete the computer-based testing, it's a pretty large window. So as of now, for as far as our opt-outs and refusals, we did a comparison of last year versus this year. So overall, looking at elementary, we did decrease the number of opt-outs and refusals that we had. And if we move on to the next slide, you'll see the middle school participation, who also decreased their numbers of refusals and opt-outs. And again, this is just for ELA. And then if you move to the next slide, this is just the overall 3 through 8 ELA comparisons at this point. But again, overall, we took a decrease. And so we will make sure that once we've completed math, but makeups are still going on. And then science will be wrapping up this week. We will update these numbers. So that is the high level. So we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Why do you think we went down in refusals? Is it just parents are starting to not have an issue with the testing anymore? Or I know for a while there, we heard a lot from parents.
Sure, and I'm going to open it up to principals if you have more input, but I know that our communication, starting with the January simulation, I know Dr. Genestri communicated out, I know their principals did, and I know that there was a lot of just, conversations with parents, kind of letting them know what this experience would be. The students had the opportunity to kind of try that out in January, and I think and informally kind of talking with a lot of our students throughout this process, I think many of our students were feeling a little bit of relief that they weren't doing all of the writing and kind of enjoyed using the devices, but I will let you chime in. You might have different thoughts.
Yeah, I think anytime we put an assessment in front of a student, formative or summative, it's really important to understand the purpose. So we've really tried to work hard at communicating that purpose with families while there's still challenges of when we get that information back, the results back from the state. It's really important for us to communicate, the information that we use from those assessments, how it helps us drive instruction, that it's not necessarily just about a score or proficiency. It's also a lot about growth. So I think we've done a much better job over the last couple of years, really communicating that purpose and function to families. While we certainly understand there's still those politically that don't agree with the test or don't feel like it's a reflection of where kids are academically, we respect parents, choice of whether their students participate or not. But we still pride ourselves on communicating that information and letting parents know why we use that information, how it drives, whether that's intervention services, whether that's, curriculum gap analysis for some of the standards that we really want to grow in as a district.
And for the special ed kids, were there any additional challenges that you came across that maybe you didn't anticipate with this testing? And
I mean, other than parents had a lot of questions, and we talked about it, informally with them on the actual testing day. I don't know that the buildings had any specific challenges.
And what about for our English as second language kids? Any?
So one thing that we decided to do, and really this was kind of a regional decision, was that all of our Ls would take the paper-based version if they required a translated edition. So that way they had the English version and then their translated version in front of them. So I would say that helped. But other than that, we haven't experienced any extra challenges with that.
We were able to accommodate all the languages and dialects and.
Yeah, so we had a few that required oral translation, but our E&L team worked really hard with the Office of Special Programs to kind of coordinate all of that. I will say it did help. We were really thoughtful in our scheduling to make sure that all the buildings kind of had their designated time so that they were able to accommodate elementary and middle school as well.
I have a question. Just wondering, is there any discussion on the way the teachers communicate this to the kids in terms of the testing? And the reason I ask is I had gotten some feedback that from pretty good students, this is at the elementary level, that parents are considering taking them out because their kids had some level of anxiety related to the way this is being presented to them. And I understand every teacher may be a little bit different, but I'm wondering, is there an overall approach? Because I'll give you some examples. I even heard comments of like, once we get through testing, we'll do X, or once we, make sure you get a good night's rest all this week because we have testing, so there's this pressure I've gotten some feedback on that the kids are maybe perceiving because the teachers want them, obviously to perform as well as they can. So is there any discussion like, hey, this is how we want to make sure this is communicated in a way that's as unthreatening or least amount of anxiety to the students from the teachers? Because they probably I do get some feedback that parents are like, I'm just done with this because my kids are getting anxious about a test that I don't know how much, they're wondering how much impact is it on them, their child personally. But I understand it's important for the district and for, but just wondering if there's any thoughts on that or.
So one thing I can speak to as far as just the experience itself is that we really worked hard to make sure that the students were having an opportunity. There is a Questar sampler, so it's really, they had the January simulation, but we had asked teachers to kind of, find ways to embed that in their instruction with the support of the literacy and math coaches as well as the technology coaches to help relieve some of that anxiety. So they were using it as just, good practice. Same thing with the tools they were given as far as the stylus pens and just the use of the iPad. So I know we tried to make it, a kind of seamless transition so that students were feeling really comfortable with it. But I don't know if you guys wanted to jump in as far as.
I would also just say just our natural way of how we integrate technology in our everyday instruction at K through 12, really. That's been a huge focus, especially this year. So our kids are really comfortable with the technology piece. And I think that was one of our biggest, most important pieces of our PD that we had back in the fall, to make sure that, K through 5, K through 8 teachers are really implementing technology in the right ways, that it's just very authentic so that when the testing comes, it's not anything that might be of surprise to them.
Yeah. I will say from one of my children told me it was how exhausted and tired their eyes were and everything else after the test, yet they can spend twice as much time on a Saturday if we gave it to them watching YouTube. So I'm like, how is this possible? You can watch YouTube for 8 hours if you want it.
Yeah, and one thing I will say is what's really nice about the Nextera system is that you can log in and see the students' progress in real time. So if today, for example, I was at Maplemere for the science testing, I can watch the progress of what's going on at Maplemere, but I was also able to see what was happening at Heritage and Willow Ridge. And one thing I'm really pleased with is our students are really trying hard and taking their time. Oftentimes the biggest concern is that everyone's going to get a little click happy because it is pretty easy to navigate. We really haven't seen that. I want to say our students are working really hard and taking their time, and we're noticing similar patterns across all of the buildings. So that has definitely been a great sign for us with this being the first year.
Dr. Koskowski, you mentioned that you hired a vendor to do some of the scoring to take some of that pressure off the teachers. Are we far enough along in that process yet that you can say whether it was a success or whether there's some room for change in there, or is that still to be determined?
So one thing that's nice is I mentioned that it's not going to take the teachers out of the classroom. What we're going to see is we're going to be able to go back into the system and kind of review. So once we get the test results, we will be able to see the student work and access that. So I think that'll be different. I think we're going to want to build in opportunities. I know we've talked with our instructional coaches to make sure that they still have that feedback. And so as Mr. Ryan spoke of the gap analysis, that's one piece that we're going to want to make sure that we build in. But I think as far as the overall implementation and the loss of the instructional time of taking the teachers out of the room, I think that's definitely going to be a huge gain for us.
Thank you.
To piggyback off of what Brian had said, we're trying to teach these life skills to these kids. So I don't have a problem with a teacher saying, get a good night's sleep, because when these kids are older and they have to give a presentation at work, that's what we want them to do. So I think the teaching of some of these skills is very useful too.
And I also like to add to that too. I appreciate the principal's work here, because I think the message when I've talked to parents has been pretty clear. These they're high stake testing for the district because we really want to see where we are as a district. For the kids, it has nothing to do with advancement. This is about, and I've told this to 100 parents, this is about us gathering data so we can provide, so we have information to provide the best education or interventions possible so we can improve ourselves in our instructional practices. And I think that message has been well received throughout the district. I also think it lends to the fact that we've seen a decrease in opt-outs because parents get that what we're trying to accomplish, and they're seeing the data come home. They're seeing the data and online tools with Schoology and everything like that too. So I think that message is really, and I credit the principals for getting that message out there that, you know, this is for us to improve our instructional practices. And I appreciate the parents that I've talked to who've also gotten that message.
And just the other thing to add, it mentioned the life skills. So the responsibility, we also made the decision the students to charge the iPads, their responsibility to bring them in charged. And I will say the principals worked really, really hard communicating that expectation. And you'd be very surprised that only with 25 loaners per elementary school that we bring and 50 at the middle school, we never exhausted those. And there were maybe a handful of students that, you know, needed to do a little charge or to swap their iPads out. But they did a really good job taking on that responsibility and managing it. So that was also a win for us.
I got so many messages from the middle school that the only anxiety about going around testing was from me, because I was like, I'm gonna get in trouble if this thing isn't in charge at night. So
Do we have a
they did a great job.
timetable for results? I mean, I know that, I mean, everybody probably laughs at, I know.
Last year was October.
Yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
gonna do this and do it right, we need to have answers so that teachers can prepare starting, you know, in the summertime, so they can start getting ready for September. This is supposed to speed up things, is what we heard.
I think, you know, we'll start to see things shift hopefully when everyone has to go all in with the computer-based testing. But I think with the split still being paper-based and computer-based, it may take a while. It may take a little while.
You put that nicely.
Do you foresee at the high school level, Regents going to computer-based?
I would hope so. We talk about that we're doing all this preparation for the younger students, and my hope would be that the goal is then when these students are moving up to those grade levels, that they are going to be so fluent in their digital tools that that would be a really seamless transition for them.
I would hope it goes all the way to the higher ed level, because I can tell you the paper and pen at a higher ed level is.
Ridiculous.
Yes, thank you. I took the words right out of my mouth.
I know the College Board is planning next year to administer 9 of their AP exams fully digitally. We offer 3 of those, I believe. Are we equipped with the same systems to handle those digital-based testing?
We actually started a number of those assessments during, it all shifted during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so that shift had started then and it's just continuing. So College Board is continuing that path. So we are prepared to do online testing with College Board. The PSAT, SAT, there's some components of those that have shifted to digital.
And I did have a conversation with Mr. Belanti on Friday about some of our students having trouble with our iPads at the SAT. So Mr. Feldman and I talked about that today, and we're gonna talk to Mr. Baker and kind of put a plan together to make sure that we know what the computer the needs are before the student goes to off-site, so we can fully prepare the iPad.
Yeah, because it was the students that were taking the SATs at non-Sweet Home schools.
Right.
Where they were having trouble getting into their
Yeah, what we-
VPN or whatever.
Yeah, what we found helpful as we were talking about this, and Dr. Kozakowski mentioned there was a checklist on the app, basically that we had to go through to make sure that everything worked. I don't know for an SAT or PSAT if those things are in place, so we'll investigate it and
The next one's.
gotta get ready.
We have the PSAT because
one
we
this
give it, and so
weekend.
maybe that checklist will
Maybe.
help us with the.
Maybe.
With the
2 weeks,
SAT.
the next 2 weekends.
Because those are offsite, usually they're not.
Was it the 25th and the 1st?
Yeah,
something like those are that. the next 2
Just saw
Saturdays
an
are the
email
next.
today about the one in June, first weekend in June. Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you, everybody. It
Thank
really
you.
was a
Thank you.
great job, and our goal really was, and I think we reached it, was to make sure that teachers and students could focus on the tests and not the technology. And this team did a wonderful job making sure that goal was met, so. So moving on, our budget vote, just a reminder, is next Tuesday night, May 21st, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in Virgil's, this room right here. We encourage all community members, all members of the Sweet Home community to come out and vote on there. I did include a couple slides on the vote, but I know the board has seen these slides many times. But in case there are any questions, I'm not going to go through them tonight unless there's any points of clarification needed. But I think we are more than ready to offer this budget up to the public next Tuesday night. There's also, there's 3 propositions, one for the budget, one for 2 board seats, and one a 5-year term, one to fill out a 1-year term. And then, of course, the Proposition 2 to extend the Maple Mere temporary classroom lease through October 31st. That number, 52,920, is over 2 budget years, not 1 budget year, to maintain those temporary classrooms at Maple Mere. We got some news this week, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Feldman on our electric bus. For one piece of good news, we get one piece of pump the brakes, no pun intended, but we're still moving forward, and we think we are on track. So,
so if you remember correctly, when we were going through the budget process back in February, there is money in the budget presently, if the budget were to pass, to purchase buses, 3 of which are electric buses that were awarded to us through the truck voucher incentive program through NYSERDA. And that basically knocked $200,000 off the price. It was an incentive to the electric buses. And then if you remember, we came back and said that we were eligible to piggyback off of that funding and go into the New York State or NYSERDA New York State School Bus Incentive Program. And they allowed us to further knock down that price. We got $61,500 for the 3 buses. So we were notified this week that we were officially approved. We knew it was coming, but we did get word from Wendell and NYSERDA and Matthews Buses, our bus vendor, that we've been approved for that program. So we are full go there. So that's good news.
celebrate that.
Yeah.
Celebrate that. We have also submitted the work over at the service center that needs to be done to get the bus yard ready for charging stations for the new buses. Now, remember again, Wendell presented to us 3 phases. We've submitted a project that includes the 3 temporary chargers for these 3 new buses, as well as charging for the first round of buses for us. So we've submitted that to SED. We've got a project number. I've spoken to Sarah Madison at the Office of Facilities Planning and politely reminded her that she promised that she would expedite it. And she's holding true to her word. So she's going to try and expedite it as quickly as we possibly can. So more good news there. Now the charging stations. So in addition to the school bus incentive program that NYSERDA has got, they've also got a charging voucher program that would allow up to, I think it's $60,000 per charger. I don't remember exactly, but anyway. So we've submitted an application for our first 3 chargers. And I am not an electrician. I don't pose to be one, but there are 2 manufacturers of electric bus chargers in the United States. One is XCharge, and the other one is, I'm not gonna remember, but the one, it's Lime. I think it's not LimeWire. LimeWire was the music. I can't remember the name of the other charger. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but anyways, it was that other charging company, and it'll come to me probably about 9:15 tonight. I go, oh man, I forgot. But that other charging company was the charger that we wanted to go with. Neither of the 2 manufacturers of these chargers that would fit the buses that we are looking to use have what's called a UL rating from some agency in the United States. If you flip over your toaster at home, there's a UL certification on the bottom of your toaster. Neither one of these two charging companies are UL certified. So we had a meeting with Wendell, we had a meeting with NYSERDA, and I basically said to our rep at NYSERDA, I go, you guys have got to get moving here. You got to shake some trees to try and get one of these two charging manufacturers UL certified. So they forged ahead and agreed that they would certify a pending UL certification for, and I cannot remember the name of our charging company. I'll get it for you, but for our charging company. Okay, so they said we can go forward with their UL certification is in the hopper. We can go forward with it, and then we can get the money back for our charging stations on that. The morning I had a conversation there, I got an email from a different rep at NYSERDA that said that this company is closing up shop and closing its operations in America.
Did they not know
They
this
did
when
not
they
know.
talked to you?
They did not know, and I'll find the name of it. But anyway, so we're kind of in a holding pattern right now. We don't know how, what, where we're going to charge these buses. So we're working with Matthews, our bus company right now, to provide more temporary solutions to charge these buses. So NYSERDA is kind of left holding the bag here. They need to make some decisions. They need to get things kind of certified so that they can give away the hundreds of millions of dollars that they said that they were going to give away.
Well, this doesn't just affect us. This is an entire state that has to meet mandates that's not going to have the infrastructure.
Correct.
And I know Mr. Johnson and I sat at the legislative breakfast, but I think it was Assemblyman Conrad who basically talked about the commission that the governor is putting together to study whether or not this mandate, the effects of this mandate is having on every school district.
So that's not, yes. So it's not LimeWire, it's FreeWire. I got it. I knew I'd get it. But it's FreeWire. So that was the conversation that was had with us, Wendell and NYSERDA. Like, if we continue to hit, for every 2 steps forward, we seem to take 3 steps backwards. And there's got to be some discussions at the state level about the timeline that is being imposed.
So we're putting in money into these temporary ones, correct? How long will they last us?
I can't speak to that. The temporary charging stations that we had earmarked, that FreeWire made, were something that we could move to other locations to make permanent later down the road. The ones that we're talking with Matthews about are really something that you could kind of roll out to the bus and plug in. It takes a longer period of time to charge the buses from that standpoint. But I don't know what other alternatives I have.
Battery life?
That won't affect the battery life. It'll take longer to charge the batteries.
Once it gets cold.
It'll hold the
the
charge. It just will take longer to charge.
Hmm.
So for every 3 steps forward we seem to take 2 steps backwards. But anyway.
So I have a question you might not like.
To a point.
With the assumption that our budget gets passed, what is the timetable that Matthews has on us getting the electric buses?
Good question, Mr. Belanti. So sometime, we've been told, end of September, early October.
So next June?
No.
It's gonna be like my
I think
van.
so what we have in place right now, we have a provisional purchase order that's in place that says if our budget passes in May, we're good to go. So
Okay.
I think things are being manufactured. I think that they can hit that timeline. It's now about how we charge them. And if we can't figure out how we can charge them, they can hold them for us until we can figure
Okay.
out. What I don't want to have happen is 3 brand new buses sitting in the middle of our parking lot with no charge.
Thank you.
So
What do you know about, I know they had that article in the On Board or one of ours about Lake Shore, and I mean, Is there anybody that's using anything else but the temporary?
Depends upon the bus manufacturer, so we have reached out to Lake Shore, so we're getting information. I was hopeful to get it to a situation where we'd be more permanent, but based upon the charging non-certification of this UL certification, that might be difficult, but I think that we can do something on a temporary basis. More temporary than I would have hoped. Say that.
All right, thanks, Mr. Feldman. Again, just want to reiterate our heritage teachers and their Ghana trip this summer. I found out this week that the teachers are going with another group from, I think, Massachusetts, I was told, and they will be having dinner with the president of Ghana as part of their trip. So they are still accepting donations. We're helping them with shipping to Ghana of all the boxes that are in the hallway at Heritage Heights right now. But again, just really proud of their efforts to do this educational mission trip, and we'll be supporting them along the way. And then May 22nd, the day after the budget vote, we are very pleased to have our second annual, well, this will be our third total, but their second annual Challenge to Change event. It will be once again at Banchetti's. The board is welcome to attend on May 22nd, starting at 9-ish, I think it is.
Yeah, the program will actually start at 9:30.
9:30. So we have over 200 students that will be in attendance. We have speakers. We have work that the students will be doing on their identities and on acceptance and belonging. And so really excited to do this event again. It was a huge success last year. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know, Mrs. Bayless, if you have any comments on it, but
We're looking forward to the event. I appreciate we can't do it without the support of our administrative, our team, our cabinet and teachers who, PPS staff who come out to support the event, to facilitate all the groups. It takes about 25 adults to help facilitate. So we're always very appreciative of the time that people have made. I know Dr. Ryan Stell, Barrel Area will be there, using up their time to help facilitate groups. The Students Act team has taken a lead this year. They're going to MC the event and be co-leaders of all of the groups. And we're welcoming back Marquise 10,000 Burton, as you recall, our distinguished Sweet Home Wall of Fame recipient from a year ago. So he'll be doing a freestyle poem for us, as he did last year. So the kids have worked on some program enhancements. They've tweaked it up a little bit. They're excited. Should be a great afternoon or great day. See you there.
Great. Last reminder to please vote again Tuesday night. And I know Mrs. Bayless mentioned the workplace violence policy. You all have that for review this month. And just want to thank Mrs. Bayless for leading the effort to get that policy customized for Sweet Home. There were a lot of moving pieces in that, including site visits to all of our schools to assess, do safety assessments. There was a large team that were involved in a day-long effort to go to each building. As well as a lot of enhancements to the policy to make sure that it is Sweet Home appropriate. So please review. We'll bring it up next month and we will make sure that the questions are asked by the board, but it really puts in a structure to report workplace violence and to investigate and come up with recommendations. And finally, I just want to mention, she's in the audience tonight, but we're very happy to present Chandra Jagello to you. Did I do that right? Jagello. To the board tonight for a vote for our administrator for climate and culture. Chandra did a outstanding job each point in the interview process. There were 62 applicants for this position. Even though it was uniquely written for Glendale, we were very pleased with the amount of applicants. But Chandra did a great job. Every step of the way was the leading candidate. We were fortunate because she's already done some work in the building. Now we're going to get her full time, which is huge, I think, for the climate and culture over at Glendale. We can't wait for her to start. We're super excited about her credentials, but also her enthusiasm for this work. It was clear from moment one that this is her wheelhouse. This is what she wants to do in her career, help kids that are at most need. And I think we cannot wait to get going on a full-time basis. Probably not as much as Mrs. Delaplante, but can't wait to get going on that, and very excited to present her to you tonight for approval or for vote.
I have one question.
Yes.
What if you're, what if you're coming to vote and you're really hungry?
Oh, I apologize. I'm glad you asked that question. There will be an outstanding BW Chicken Barbecue here from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. If you come at that time, certainly you will smell it. There will be chicken, a couple side dishes, rolls. There will also be desserts that are presented by chef.
That's good.
So come hungry. They are outstanding chicken barbecues, and like I said, you don't have to reserve one, but I want 4.
There you go.
All money goes to Dollars for Scholars.
And the money goes to Dollar
Yay.
for Scholars. So,
While supplies last.
well supplied.
Yes.
I'll be in line at 4.
4 through 30. Okay, anybody have anything else for Dr. Genestri? Okay. Upcoming events, it is concert season, so we've got all of that. Leadership days at several of our buildings. As said before, district vote, chicken barbecue, all of those things. And we're coming up on the end of the year. Memorial Day is just next week. That brings us to open session. Our first open session, as per board policy 1510, this open session is for topics related to tonight's agenda. Is anyone interested in speaking? Please come to the mic and give us your name and address. And then you have 3 minutes.
You want to read the policy?
It's on?
Yeah.
Need to be on?
I'd have to
My name is Peter Hoysick. I live in town of Tonawanda on Millwood Drive. I'm just curious, I think it was you. When did you get yours? Because I just got mine and I rushed over here after I familiarized myself with it a little bit. I just got it today.
Mine came today as well.
No, mine came last week, actually.
So the reason I ask is because it mentions a meeting that I missed about the budget on May 7th. And then obviously I rushed over here. All right. I mean, this is really the only way I get communications about what goes on in the Sweet Home School District. And if it's late, it doesn't do me any good. All right. The first page of this message from the superintendent, it says that the budget for the school district is now $100 million. Until the town of Tonawanda went crazy recently, that was the budget of the entire town of Tonawanda. I'm not asking you to justify this with a long lecture. I'm just maybe briefly. That's a lot of money.
We can't really respond, but we will have somebody reach out to you tomorrow. If you want to leave your name with us, we'll definitely reach out.
With who?
You can leave it with,
All right.
actually, leave it with Sherry, our secretary.
Okay, I see her. Next question is, the next page actually says, to vote, you need to be a citizen of the United States. But there's nothing on this whole page that talks about what documentation you're going to ask for. And I know that we had a presentation up here and I'm assuming that there's illegal aliens in the school district because they were talking about speaking different languages. So how are you going to verify that only US citizens vote next week?
Again, we can't respond, but I do believe that in order to vote, you do need to produce your legal documentation, a license.
There's no citizenship on a New York State driver's license. There's nothing. I looked at it before I came over here.
But you have to prove it when you get your license.
In fact, this is a problem that's going on in the whole country right now. And it's a bigger problem in New York State because I don't understand why an illegal alien would be allowed to have a New York State driver's license. But all there is on the form when they apply for that is a checkbox that says you also want to register to vote. And I think, I don't know, maybe they didn't, when they put that box on there, they didn't consider that non-citizens could vote because they get a US state driver's license, and you just said that's what you're expecting people to bring. But that's the situation that they've created in New York State. There's a lot of states that don't allow that in the United States. All right, so no answer. You'll answer me later. Okay.
There are 10 seconds remaining in your 3 minutes, sir.
Message from the Board of Education says our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives remain strong. I'm just curious, give me a dollar number. What is the budget cost for that? Just an approximate number, million, 10 million, I don't know. You don't know? All right.
Well, again, and we can address those questions tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is not. the place.
You could leave your set of questions with our.
I could
Mrs.
type them and
McNamara.
email them to you. I just scribbled in this thing when I found it in my mailbox when I came home. Am I running out of time?
You have.
All right, I'm going to skip to this question. Why are we buying electric buses when the conventional thought now has gone away, shifting away from at least vehicles, gasoline-powered vehicles, causing an increase in CO2 in the atmosphere? Electric vehicle sales are plummeting in this country, and the manufacturers of automobiles are stopping production of EVs because they don't work in the cold, particularly here. They have problems with batteries. You guys are buying buses with batteries that if they explode in a collision, that's like the worst battery explosion. You know, these things cause fires, these EVs, right? I don't, especially now that New York State has infrastructure problems, which you talked about today, for charging electric buses. Why are we even buying electric buses?
More information on that too.
I
There
can
is
follow up with you on that tomorrow.
All right. Am I out of time?
Yes, sir.
You are. I got any questions, I'll send them to.
Please do.
Perfect.
Thank you. Anybody else? That brings us to new business. May I have a motion and a second for consent agenda on items B through H? We will be voting on A separately.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I have a motion and a second on new business item A, special education?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Thank you. Informational items. Let's start with Hunter.
All right, student government held our meeting today. We discussed end of year activities, came up with an idea for final farewells, where students can write out, or send advice or a thank you card, along with a small gift, most likely candy or some sort of goodie bag, to other students or staff members as their kind of final farewell before the summer, especially for our seniors who are almost a month away from graduation, only have about 2 weeks left in their academic instruction. And then next week, Friday, May 24th, our organization was invited by Mr. Ryan to attend Maplemere Elementary's annual Leadership Day. We'll be helping out with their activities that they have planned, along with celebrating our young student leaders and continuing the connection between our elementary and high school students. That is all I have.
Great, thank you. Ms. Jason?
As we voted on the class placements and all of that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, first of all, I did read the 417 pages this month for special ed. And again, pass on to your team.
Happy Nurses Week.
I
was gonna abstain.
Until now. Thanks, Josh. But pass on to your team. Every time I read those every month, it just, they go above and beyond for every single one of our kids. So that there's a lot of work involved in every single IEP that is sitting there. So tell them again, thank you for all the work. And the only other thing I did was our PTA meeting at Maplemere. Really, financially, they're in a great shape. A recess for PTA is starting up again. The fun run updated. They're talking about officers for next year, and I think we have our full slate of officers, so yay. Mr. Ryan brought up some activities, nothing that we haven't heard, field day, leadership day. And his mission for, one of his goals is new student transition work. He'll be working on that during the summer as looking at how we welcome new students, and that's his goal. So more to come about that.
Believe he will also be getting attacked with silly string on Friday, if I read that
Oh, is
correctly.
that,
So-
did they? Okay. Okay, and Christy, you'll be there to capture that, right? Thank you. Thank you. And that's it.
Okay, Mr. Feldman?
I don't have anything new this week.
Great. Mr. Leibel?
No activities to talk about. The only thing I want to mention that I'm appreciative of is the high school athletes. I've noticed and I've heard through my own kids and other parents that they have visited, in many cases, the grade schools. And I think that's been a very positive experience for the students. And you know, I've had some parents say they wanted autographs, they wanted pictures. These young students really look up to the high school athletes. And, you know, I think not only is it positive in that the high school athletes are giving back and showing the value of being, you know, having a greater role as an athlete, not just performing on the field, but also, you know, what that may come with in terms of people looking up to you and leadership. And then for the younger students, just, you know, it gets them more excited and enthused about, you know, the opportunities and in athletics down the road. So appreciate that. And I think that's been a big success.
Great, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Just one thing, as Dr. Genetra mentioned, we were at the legislative breakfast this past Saturday. We had it set up in such a way that we had Senator Gallivan come in to speak. He's in the Republican Party, and Assemblyman Conrad, who happens to be one of our reps, is a Democrat, so we get both houses and both sides of the political aisle. These two gentlemen work very well together. You can tell just listening to them that they spend a lot of time together when they're talking. Each had some good stuff to say about we had just mostly asked them to talk about the finished session and the things that they see upcoming. I've got a handful of notes on it, but I know one of the things that Senator Gallivan mentioned is that when the governor put her budget out to begin with, they were very surprised that they had removed the save harmless stuff. Obviously, that didn't affect us, but it affects half the schools in the state. So that was one of the big things that they fought for going back in. He did stress that they got the waiver on retiree earnings again for this year. And I think a lot of us share the same thing, that they'd asked for the money for foundation aid. SED had specifically asked to study the foundation aid for me and asked for $1 million. And the governor put in $2 million, but isn't letting SED do the study. They're sending it out to a commission whose name escapes me at the moment. Thank you, the Rockefeller Commission. And they were everybody there was very concerned about where that might go. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think the answers have already been determined and the commission is just writing the message for the governor. That's my personal opinion. And Assemblyman Conrad talked after that, and he was looking at a couple different things and being able to work across the aisle with our colleagues in other areas of the state too. The Western New York delegation is doing pretty good, but he said when they were working on the budget, when they tried to reach out to the governor to talk about some very specific issues, she just flat out refused to listen to them. And it wasn't just him, it was the whole delegation from Western New York, which is kind of frustrating, especially since she's from Western New York. He's pushing a bill to fully fund free lunches across state instead of the hodgepodge we have now. And he's talked about another one about a bill for a seal of financial literacy, which I think is a good thing. And that's pretty much it from my notes on that.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Valenti?
Yeah, this Saturday, the varsity softball team did a fundraiser for the summit and participated in the Summit Autism Walk. They raised over $900 for the Summit Autism. The baseball program is holding a fundraiser and basket raffle this Sunday at Papa Grande's from 1 to 3. I know our playoff teams, our spring sports are starting playoffs this week, so good luck to all of them. And I was unable to attend the Erie County Association of School Boards DA meeting on Thursday, and as soon as Dave sends out the information from that meeting, I will pass it along to everybody.
Great. Anything else?
Nope, just a busy week.
All right. Couple things for me. I attended the high school PTSA last week, and they are in really good shape. They are ready to do the award night for scholarships. lots of things coming up that they are supporting, including prom, exams, graduation, all of those things. Brick sales are doing well. We have 122 members. I have it on very good authority. You can take this back to the student body that Stars Breakfast will not be the breakfast that you normally receive.
Good.
Wonderful.
It will be, in their words, better.
Look forward to seeing it.
Yes. The Heritage, I missed their PTA meeting. I believe they had one last night and they were doing a board election vote kind of situation tonight. So obviously I'm not there for that. And I did have one conversation with a parent who really is loving the new magazine. They said it's so much better than the old ones, timing we need to work on, but also hopeful they expressed hopes that the calendar will look very similar. And I said, I haven't even talked about the calendar. I don't know. But they are hopeful that it is just as beautiful. And with that, I don't have anything else. That brings us to the second open session. Would anyone like to address the board? You have 3 minutes. Please state your name. All right, moving on. Can I have a motion and a second for consent agenda on items 1, teaching administrative, 2, service?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yay. Yay.
It's official.
Official.
And welcome to Sweet Home.
Love the bag.
Great,
You're a Panther now.
officially.
Officially a Panther.
May I have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session for matters relating to employment history of a particular individual and contract negotiations? We will not be returning.